Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cafe 1092, which I only just discovered was the official name of this room. I'm Jo Henwood, and I'm a freelance journalist and public relations professional. Some of you may be regular visitors to the cathedral, and some of you may be here for the first time. I've just spent 2 days with my Australian sister-in-law, and I think we could all agree this room is awesome to have our discussion this evening. So my job here is to introduce you to the panel, and then they'll tell us each a little bit about themselves, and then open up questions to the audience, or if you feel you've got any insight into anything we've discussed, it may not be a question, you may feel that there's something which would be of benefit to other people in the room, so feel free to make yourself known, and we'd like to hear from as many of you as possible. We've had a few questions submitted in advance. Thank you for that if you submitted a question, and I will hope to get through as many of those as possible this evening. So as Tim said, the question tonight is, what is the problem with homelessness? And our panel, between them, have a wealth of experience in working with the homeless and hoping to find solutions to that problem, if that's the right word. Homelessness is not just about people sleeping rough on the streets. A snapshot taken on the 9th of November in Cheshire West and Chester last year found that there were 22 people sleeping rough, which was up 12 from the previous year. But from 2023 to 2024, almost 5,000 people approached the council for whom a homeless application was begun. This is an increase of 62% over the last 5 years. 5 years which have included a pandemic, wars and people escaping those wars, and a cost of living crisis. So I'd like to introduce the panel who will, and I'll start over on our left. This is Councillor Richard Beacham, Cheshire West and Chester councillor, lead councillor for Chester's One City Plan. Then we have Salma Ravat, founder member and CEO of the charity OneRoof Leicester. Then we have Kev, who's a volunteer with Share Chester and has lived experience of homelessness, which he will share with you this evening. And then Jamie Edwards, homeless service manager for Share Chester. So Jamie and Kev work together. So I think I'll start with Richard. If you'd like to just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the work that you do. Switch it up, push it up.
Hello. Hello everyone, my name is Richard Beacham. I'm a councillor in Chester. I represent the Newton and Hoole ward. A few years ago I was the cabinet member for housing, which included homelessness, and in that period of time I was involved in helping to set up a group called Outside In, which brought together charity and voluntary sector groups with commission services around drug and alcohol misuse, around the rough sleeping service that we have, around healthcare and all of the other things that you would expect to be at a group like that, to talk about homelessness in Chester particularly, and to think about ways that we could help the charity and voluntary sector to support commission services to help bring people off the streets. During that period of time, one of the ideas that that group came up with was to create a contactless payment point system, where people could make donations to homeless charities in Chester rather than necessarily having to give money directly on the streets if they didn't have any change or whatever. So we have started something called the Alternative Giving Scheme, and there are 2 payment points currently in Chester, one in the Grosvenor Shopping Centre and one in Chester Market, and that money goes to Share, Chester Aid to the Homeless and Soul Kitchen, which are 3 Chester-based charities that all support homeless people. So they're the projects that I've been involved in the last couple of years.
Thank you, Richard. Salma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. thank you for inviting me to Chester. It's really nice to be here. I've not been in a very, very long time. As Joe said, I'm from OneRoof Leicester, which in the name, I'm from Leicester. And I am a co-founder of a charity called, as I've just said, OneRoof Leicester. And we provide accommodation and support to single people who are homeless. So they are anyone who's over the age of 18, there's no upper age limit, and it's single men and single women. And we provide accommodation in our houses. So we have 13 homes across the city. They're small houses, so we try to stay with sort of between 2 and 4 bed properties, where we create a home for our individuals, so they have access to it 24 hours 7. We have got an amazing team of support workers who provide intense support to help people to rebuild their lives and to move on. So the package of support we offer is everything from getting them stable once they're in the home to providing assistance with benefits for anything to do with like living skills, employability skills. And the aim is that after they've had, that stability with our project and they feel they're ready to move on, then we start supporting them with move on plans and move on accommodation, and we do all the work around moving people on. So when somebody gets a new tenancy, we will do everything, including putting in new carpets. We will fully furnish the new home for them. We will paint and decorate, clean, basically everything that they need to call it their new home, their new forever home. And through that sort of intense package, everybody that we've positively moved on has never returned back to rough sleeping. On top of that, we also work with people with no recourse, so individuals who are refused asylum seekers or migrants, other types of migrants from abroad. And we also give them a full package of support and care, so we accommodate them at no cost to them. We can do those bed spaces because of the grant funding and the donations that we get from the community. But again, it's working with people that we can work towards some kind of an exit strategy, getting them somewhere positive to move on to from us. So everyone that we work with, we don't set a time limit, so we don't have like a 6-month stay or a 9-month stay. If somebody needs to stay for 2 or 3 years, that's fine. We'll work with them and we'll keep them in our homes until they're and I think that's why we've got one of the biggest reasons for our success. OneRoof that's from any partner organisation. Actually, our homes are in the community. The homes that we have are homes that members of the community or individuals have actually to us on a long term and then use. We rely on the whole breadth of supporters from the community to help. That's probably one of our biggest strengths is the amount of community support that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Salma. I thought that was a very interesting insight into what's happening in another city in the UK, and maybe there are some things that we could learn from Salma and your charity, which I understand has just celebrated its 10th anniversary. So it's been very interesting to hear about the work you do. Kev, would you like to take the mic and have and tell us a little bit about you and your experience?
How are you, everyone? My name's Kevin. I volunteer with Cllr. I've also had lived experience of being homeless. I'm still technically homeless now, but I will say, like, I'm in Chester now about 2.5 years. And there's a few people in here that'll vouch when I say this. I was a broken man when I came down here, first of all, and it was desperation. But I got good support of the people that did support me in certain charities and certain services who are here tonight. And I just went on from there, really. I was in heavy addiction to very bad class A drugs. I was mental health gone. Everything was just, I needed to get out of where I was. My life was going down, so yeah, I came to Chester. got put into slept rough in a park with a sleeping bag on my dog. Still got the dog now. And yeah, I ended up going into a hotel. I think I lasted a week in a hotel because I was that chaotic. Ended up back in the park, obviously, into a hostel then, and I was in a hostel for 6 months. After about 5 months, decided to clean my act up and got stuck into the services then, like Aqua House, places like that. Stuck to a plan and managed to kick all the habits that I did have, and needed to basically replace the naughtiness with the good stuff. So just got into volunteering, training, doing my bit for society. Like, you know, I did say, like, I just wanted one more chance, you know, just to pray. And I just wanted one more chance, and I did say I want to get myself back to the way I am as a person, just dedicate myself to helping others, because, you know, there's not enough of us out there, to be honest with you, that do what we do. But I'm in a good place now. It's not the end of it yet, like, you know what I mean? There's still a lot more to go, but we'll get there eventually. But I'm enjoying the journey, let's put it that way. Thank you.
Tonight's actually the first time I've seen Kev without the dog. That's true. I was looking under his seat. I thought he looked different. I'm Jamie. I'm currently I forgot my title, homeless service manager at Cllr. I've got a lot of experience frontline working with the homeless. I've worked for statutory services when it was Femware, that was many years ago. I've worked big hostels, outreach all across the borough. I've worked for charities. I've worked for Chester to the Homeless, and now I'm at Cllr. I don't want to jump the gun and answer what is the problem with homelessness, but it's like on the tip of my tongue. But I think I'll wait. I'll probably do the most talking because I talk a lot. Thank you.
Thanks. You.
Yeah, that's ours.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kev and Jamie, for introducing us. I mean, would one of you like to just give a little bit more information about Cllr and the history of Cllr, and just in case there are any members of the audience who don't know about Cllr?
Well, we shouldn't really just go on about Cllr because there's other charities in Chester. Cllr's been going for, I think it's about 9. I remember when I opened the shop across the way because I was doing the outreach for Femware then on that day, and I went in there to say hello. The first time I met some of the ladies who were still at Cllr now. So Cllr's been going about 9 years. Kat's been going 50 years. Kat's the same age, or 52 years, same age as me. Younger than Rob. At Cllr, what we're doing right now at Cllr, or what I've been doing, is we've started an early morning outreach. So I've only been at Cllr about 7 months. So we started an early morning outreach. So we go out and welfare check any rough sleepers. We also transfer that information over to the likes of Four Futures and the council and different agencies, so people are aware people are, and it's us working together. We've got a Charities Together group, which is not the same as Richard's group. It's just charities, and it's just homeless charities. We meet up. We've got started a thing called Know the System, where we invite people like the local council to come along, and they talk us through step by step their system, because it is a very, very grey area. It's particularly useful for people who want to volunteer but not just butter bread. They want to come in and actually get stuck in and get on the phones and try and help people. We're going to open a place called The Shack, which is above Poundland. We get the electricity switched on Friday, apparently. We have been waiting a while. Once the electricity's on, we give it a lick of paint, and then we will be opening day services in Chester. So we'll be opening about 10:30 in the morning, doing breakfast for anyone who comes in. Anyone's welcome. Then we close for an hour, and then we reopen in the afternoon, and we've got a restore project going on. So bric-a-brac, we put stuff together and we paint it. At the minute, we've got 3 dolls' houses on the go. We currently use Cat's premise to do our restore, but we'll be doing that every day. We'll have like a bidding club so people can come in and bid on properties. We can get them onto the West Cheshire Homes application to try and get them at least, somewhere in the system. We've got a supper club during the winter where we'll try and utilise the building for the other thing called SWEP. I don't know if people are familiar with that, Severe Weather Emergency Protocol. So if the weather gets below zero, the council will put someone somewhere. So, but what we've noticed in the past is if a homeless guy hasn't got a mobile phone for the council, or no one knows of him, but if we can have a muster point of our place and they can all come and we can say, right, you're going there, you're going there, you're going there. So, yeah, vital day services, that's what we'll be offering in the near future.
I hope that gave you a little bit more of an insight into what Cheshire is doing. Back to you, Kev. I've been writing recently for a mental health magazine in the Liverpool area, and one thing I interviewed a homeless woman last year, and one thing was clear to me is that very often it's not just homelessness. There are other issues going on in that person's life, and it all comes together, and homelessness is just one element. So I think you touched on that there are many complex areas that people are often dealing with.
Homelessness. Story about this. Hello? Yeah. Homelessness is the problem, but it's the underlying problem, and then there's the red tape. People aren't on the streets because they want to be on the streets, you know what I mean? And you can walk past someone and they could be erratic to you, or they could be hounding you for money and all that. But at the end of the day, there's a trauma there, but there's also an addiction there 9 times out of 10, not all the time, but 9 times out of 10. People aren't on the streets for no reason. It's not that they want to be there, but the issue you have as well is the drug services. They can only do so much, but then you've got to look at the mental health services. They won't touch someone with an addiction until they get their addiction under control, which you've got to ask yourself sometimes, like, it's feeding each other. It's clockwise and anti-clockwise. Do you know what I mean? It's people are obviously got addiction issues because they've got mental health issues. But people have got mental health issues because they've got addiction issues. It's vice versa, but it's like the red tape is, no, we can't go near someone unless they give them clean urines or what have you, which I can understand because it's chaotic. But I think something really needs. That's a problem that needs sort of re-looking at and sorting out, because there's got to be somewhere in between. It's got to be a grey area to sort out, because it's people are just fading away. I heard it there today. I don't know how true it is, but a girl passed away on the streets somewhere today. Yeah, and. It's going to get worse. It's not going to get any better, because it's not getting addressed properly. It's a business. It's not an issue. It's a business. Homelessness is a business. There's a lot of money getting made somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of. I don't know if it's councils. I don't know what it is, but there's probably a lot of backhanders for all I know. I'm probably going a bit off now, but it's someone's making a lot of money, and people are suffering. It's just like a conveyor belt. Put you into one place and then onto another and onto another. They're waiting for people to fail, because people will fail because they're not getting the proper support, and it's just going to continue and continue and continue.
Kev. So I think, having heard from all 4 members of the panel, we get an idea of how councils are involved, charities are involved, individuals and volunteers, and it's much, it's a big picture which involves a lot of people working together to solve what is the problem of homelessness. I'll shortly ask you to put forward any questions you may have. I forgot to mention earlier that we've got a photographer here just capturing some of the moments from this evening's session. He won't be taking photographs of people's faces. Most of it will be from behind. But if any of you have any problem with that, could you just make that known to the members of the staff of the cathedral at the end? But your face will not appear on any of the photographs that are used. It's a housekeeping issue I forgot to mention. We've had about 6 questions submitted, and I'll just ask, I think this is appropriate based on what you've all been talking about just now, but it says, the latest research shows that we're all just 6 weeks away from being homeless. What should councils be doing to reduce the number of struggling families becoming homeless? Richard, would you like to take that question first?
I'll try. I don't. Is this one working? Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you. It's a really good question. In Cheshire West, it's different for different local authority areas, and I think our council. I'm not saying that we're perfect, but I do think that we have thought about this problem long and hard, and we did set out a strategy called the Fairer Future Strategy, which was about understanding how poverty was affecting people in our borough and what measures we could take as a local authority to try and improve our services, not just around homelessness, but about the kind of implications of everyday actions that actually can have an impact on you and your family and your ability to get on in life. And so, some of those things are about how people access services, how they have to repeatedly tell their story about asking for support, and how degrading that can be to have to repeatedly tell people the struggles that you're going through. So as a local authority, that's the first thing that we've tried to do, is think about people's voice in poverty and try and understand what it's like to be in poverty, and to try and listen to what people are telling us about how they interact with us as a local authority. The second thing that we've done is used something called the Household Support Grant, Household Support Funding, to try and distribute that to different community groups around Cheshire West and Chester, to provide things like holiday activities in the summer for children that are on free school meals, so that there are clubs to go to that don't identify them as children that are struggling, that are welcome to other children as well, but that make sure that children who are struggling are able to get food with their peers in a way which does not single them out as people who might be from families that are struggling. Some of that money also goes to other types of families, and you might have seen recently about the council's announcement to give money to people who are retired, people to pensioners, and other types of groups that might struggle at different times of the year with different things. The other thing, just finally, is what we're doing on our economic plans around jobs and around transport and around all of the things that can make it difficult for people to get the kind of jobs that pay decent wages in our borough, to make sure that any economic development and any economic growth we have is felt by or everybody who lives here. And I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm not saying that we, as a council, make sure that every company that starts a business here automatically pays good wages, but we do have a local living wage, and we do expect employers that come into the borough to sign up to it, particularly if they receive a grant funding from the council, or if they go into our premises. And you might have seen recently about a large investment that's happening in Ellesmere Port around green energy and energy supply. And I spent a lot of time as a cabinet member speaking to the businesses that are going into that green industrial estate to ask them about paying the local living wage and making sure that they pay that wage tracked to the Living Wage Foundation's rate, so that as inflation goes up or as the economy changes, that basic wage stays at a place where people can afford to live in a comfortable way. So they're all the things that we've been doing.
Salma, I know your charity deals mostly with single people, isn't it? You mentioned that it was single men and single women. But latest research tells us that 74,000 children, number of households with children, are living in temporary accommodation. Do you feel that your charity will have to help families more as the situation worsens, or are you working at all with any family groups?
Charity. Yeah, we don't work with families. We don't have plans at the moment to work with families, but we are seeing an increase in the number of families now living in temporary accommodation and in insecure, inappropriate accommodation in the city, as is the case nationally. We've got too many families now living, as a family unit in B&Bs and other hotel accommodation where there's no cooking facilities. There isn't a separate room, that everybody's sleeping in the same room. All they've got is like a shared bathroom. So they're not having, families that aren't able to cook a meal and eat a, wholesome meal, having to rely on very cheap takeouts or donations of very, poor quality food, to be honest. So I don't know if we will move towards working with families. However, the work that we do around campaigning and the work that we are part of in Leicester as part of, so I'm on the management committee for the Leicester Homelessness Charter, is around campaigning for better accommodation prospects and better opportunities for families to escape out of homelessness and to be moved out of very, very inappropriate temporary accommodation into permanent homes. And I think that's something, the campaign we've been doing as nationally as well as locally. But I think, you know, as councils, whether it's your council, I don't know enough about Chester Council, but for Leicester, one of the things that we have managed to get the council to do is increase, they've got an enhanced private rented sector offer, and they sort of bridge the gap between what the family can afford on benefits and what the landlord wants in rent, and that's opening up more houses for us. The other thing that we've been pushing for is for the council to look at empty homes, but also empty buildings in the city, and is there a possibility or prospect of them converting some of those into homes to be used for people on the housing register, because unfortunately Leicester is obviously, it's very heavily populated. I mean, it's about 360,000 people live in Leicester, so that's not Leicestershire as a county, just Leicester itself, and there isn't a lot of land to build on. So whilst they've got a plan to build more housing, it's short term, it's looking at actually, are there other opportunities, other ways that we can access housing to alleviate the problems we have around, you know, family homelessness, single homelessness.
Salma. Jamie and Kev, do you want to add anything? If just to remind you, what should councils be doing to reduce the number of struggling families becoming homeless?
It's not councils the issue. One of the problems with homelessness, me and Kev spoke about this at 7 o'clock in the morning, walking around looking for rough sleepers. If you were walking through a wood or through a city centre and you saw a little dog sat under a bush or in a doorway, you'd carry that home with you, and you'd get home and you'd say to whoever you live with, just saw a little dog on its own, just sat there on its own, it's going to rain tonight and there's a little dog. And you'd worry about it, you'd even go back. You know, you'd even find a phone number to ring to tell them. But we now live in a society where rough sleeping and homelessness is that normal that you just won't think of a human being who will just literally, if anything, that human being will be judged of what have they done to get themselves there. And that's a massive change even in my lifetime. I'm 52 and it wasn't like that for the first 20 years of my life. Homelessness was not, I can remember the television programme in the 80s about homeless people in London, and it was shocking. And we've now got homelessness everywhere. So it's not what can the council do, what can central government do, what can anyone do? It's about we should all be disgusted that it's 2024 and there's people sleeping on streets. And until it's a national voice saying we don't want this anymore, it'll just be bullshit solutions that just go round and round and round and come back again, regurgitated, different systems, different things, and it'll never ever go. As Kev said, some of the guys are a cash cow. Until we can say that enough, we do not want this anymore, it will not stop.
You said it all there, Jay, to be honest with you, mate. But now, what was the question again?
What can councils do? Because maybe, Kev, you have had an experience with a council.
Down the country, it's all the same. You know, if you have to do is turn social media on now or YouTube on now, and you watch certain documentaries, and it's the same issues right up from the top to the bottom of the country. Do you know what I mean? So it's not really. It's a lot to do with the governments as well, isn't it? You know, what they're doing with the country and how the country's going and how society's going because of it. You know, if they're putting people under pressure, like you said, there's 6 people are 6 weeks away from, you know, from being homeless. I'd say it'd be 4. I wouldn't say it'd be 6 weeks, it'd be 4 weeks, to be honest with you. A month's wages. You know what I mean? You're gone. But I don't really know what to add to that. But what the councils can do is, I think it's a bad thing. It's a sad thing to say when the services probably doing more than what on charities doing more than what councils are actually doing sometimes. You know what I mean? Putting certain things like, oh well, you. Like I only found out the other day about. I was doing a bit of training, and to get a local connection, you know, obviously you've got to be in the city 6 months or what have you. Now, I've heard services telling rough sleepers that, you know, that go back to where you come from. You know, they're not from the city. Go back to where you come from. You know, but I was told the other day of someone from the council that no, you can be on the street for 6 months and get a local connection, but nobody knows that. You know, if you're going to give us certain information, give us all the information. Don't just give us the 10 bobs where just to, and get rid of that. You're not going to get rid of the problem. The problem is always going to be there. It's just, you know, it's while the situation, social housing, the way everything's going in general, you know, the property, the prices, how are people supposed to survive? Food, everything's going through the roof. So, you know, unless the economy and everything else starts sorting itself out, then, you know, but at the end of the day, I think the human being is probably the last, the person on the street in any way is probably be the last person to benefit. That's, well, I've probably gone off the air altogether, but it's just the way I am. Sorry.
Thank you, Kev. Thanks. Now, I don't know if any of you, if anybody here asked that question, but is there anyone who'd like to ask anything in addition to what's been said by the panel? There is a mic. There is a roving mic? No, I can borrow a mic. No? Okay. So, Kev, you just mentioned when you were just talking about social media, and one of the questions submitted is, do you believe social media is to blame for the negative attitude towards homelessness? So I wonder if you've got a thought on that. Do you think, I mean, social media can be blamed for many things, and it also has many positive aspects, but do you think homelessness is expressed in social media in a negative way?
Well, at the end of the day, it's down to the person themselves, how they perceive it. Do you know what I mean? It's not down to social media. You know, if you've got any bit of empathy in your body, you look at it one way, but if you've got no empathy in your body, you look at it a different way. So I wouldn't say social media. It's some people portray it. Like I've seen certain things on social media, and some guys go out, you know what I mean, basically to get content and, you know, make a show of people who are on the streets, like, you know, take advantage of them. Then there's other guys that go out and, you know, they'll try and support them and help them, try and signpost them to places. But I think at the end of the day, it's down to the person and what the person's got themselves to make that choice themselves. No, it's not social media. It can go two ways, can't it? You know what I mean? So, no, I wouldn't put it down to social media.
Do you think social media has a part to play in portraying homelessness in a negative way?
I don't think it particularly does. I think social media is more used by people to spread hatred and spread and create fear amongst people. And I think that social media for me is probably used more negatively towards refugees and asylum seekers than it is for people who are homeless. I think, you know, we can all use social media to change the rhetoric and change the conversation, and it is very difficult. But I think overall, I think homelessness as an issue, I don't think is portrayed negatively. I think more that actually we're using social media more and more to generate and garner the support that we need for our organisations and for the work we do, and to raise awareness of the issues that are faced by people who are homeless. And I mean, we personally, or as a charity, we've not had anything negative on our social media for the work that we do. But I think overall, I think the negativity is much more towards refugees and asylum seekers and the asylum hotels, and there's a lot more scaremongering, and I think that all stems from the language that is used by government, and especially the previous government around migrants, and the language that they've used that's actually created so much of that fear and so much of that negativity. But yeah, for homelessness, I think at the moment, but it doesn't mean that it can't change.
Do you have anything to add?
Anything to add other than what other people have said, but I do think at its best social media can be used by everyday people to spread stories of hope, and at its very, very, very best it is a good way for people to learn about other people's life experiences. At its worst it is everything that everybody else has said.
Do you have anything to add?
I think social media is a compassion indicator, and people should take time out just to go through the history of what they've sent and what they're sharing with people. So if you're sharing what Richard's talking about, stories of charities and organisations and hope, then that's inside you. If you're sharing videos of Joey with 2 teeth rotten drunk in the street, then that's what's inside you. And I think that's all social media is, and it's the individual sharing what they share. It's all there.
Anyone else like to add anything about social media?
Not particularly about social media, if I can change the subject slightly, but isn't part of the problem that with the right to buy introduced by Margaret Thatcher some 40 odd years ago, there's a complete lack of social housing? And I just wonder, what is the policy of Chester towards building more social housing?
A couple of years ago we built the first council house in this borough for 40 years, and it opened, and there are families proud of. I think one of the biggest challenges has been around the legislation for the right to buy, which still permeates our society today. And the biggest thing that winds me up, and I'm sorry if there's anybody in the crowd that works for a social landlord, but some, I'm not saying this is all social landlords, but some of them have just become very, very big private companies that now rent social housing basically at a lower rate, but they've stripped those assets, they haven't invested in them, and what people are now living in is substandard social housing that's at a lower rate, and that's what the right to buy also sorry, that's not what the right to buy created, but that's what the deregulation of the social housing market also created. So, and in communities, what that's meant is that some people have bought social housing, they're now renting it out privately, and you've got big estates where you've got some private rented, some social rented, and nobody is managing those estates in the way that they used to be managed when they were owned by councils, and it's led to, you know, antisocial behaviour and all of the things that we've seen that recognised now as decline in estates, and that's happening in Chester, it's happening all over the country. So the failure of that policy is not just about now a lack of housing, it's about a fundamental decline in our society and how our society thinks about people, thinks about housing, and thinks about the kind of place we all want to live, and that's the biggest crying shame for me.
Like to add, or is that's do you have any experience of the social housing? You deal with Leicester Council, so I just wondered if there's.
That's hard, is that we lose about 700 social housing accommodation every year through the buy-to-let scheme, and the council, obviously, one, like I mentioned earlier, we don't have the land, but obviously they don't have the finances to replace that many lost houses, because so it's a really big challenge. I mean, Leicester, the council have now set up themselves as a housing builder, and where they can secure land. I think they're building 1,000 houses in Leicester, which will be social housing. But you've still got that vicious wheel, really, in that actually when it comes around, they will lose those houses again eventually if there isn't a change in government policy. And I think that's something that, again, we've campaigned on around, a reversal, or even just sort of putting even if you can't fully stop it, just putting sort of like the brakes on it for a spell so that we can just try and get people off the housing register into social housing. But it is really challenging, and like you say, it's much more complex than just the fact that you're losing houses. It's losing whole communities as well, and like you say, the whole challenge around people buying those and then giving them out to rent.
You wanted to add something, Richard?
The other thing I wanted to say was the way that the council's got around this problem in Cheshire West and Chester is we take old school sites or anything where they're brownfield sites, usually small pockets in communities, and we work with housing developers to how to explain this. So we get a few houses from the estate which we can add into our social housing, but because we own the freeholds separately, they're not eligible for the right to buy. So we keep them as affordable. They're not social rent; they're affordable rent. So it's slightly more than social rent, but they cannot be bought under that right to buy. And we get a few houses. Say we build 10 houses, we might get 1 or 2 houses, and we keep those. And that's the deal that we do with developers, in order so that we don't build the houses, we get the properties. And we've been doing that for years. And there's pockets of them all over Cheshire West and Chester.
Salma, you made reference not so long ago about refugees, and I know that Cllr work with refugees. So one of the questions that's been submitted is, in 2018, Chester officially became a city of sanctuary for refugees and those in need. Despite this, there seems to be little or to no information in the Chester community on what difference has been made to those who present as refugees and are homeless. Why is this? So we're now 6 years on from City of Sanctuary. I'm just wondering, Jamie, do you want to say a little first, and I'll come to you, Richard, later.
Gets their refugee status, they're instantly given 18 days to get out of the Serco house they're in, and they don't become a refugee stat, they become a homeless stat. So I quite a lot, and there's some other guys from the actual outreach from the council, find them at the train station, and they just fall into the, and whether they speak English or not, they fall into the homeless mix. They can still, the council have got a refugee team, and I've met them and they're all good, but that is the system that the refugees guy get. You know, the stories you hear on social media of people getting this and that, but that's what happens. They get the refugee status, and so many days later they're instantly moved out and just told to present to the local council as homeless. So.
Yeah, I mean, I was involved in the City of Sanctuary group, and I was involved in the Sanctuary group as well. I passed the motion at full council, which was required in order to receive the official awarding of becoming a borough of sanctuary. What it was about really was making sure that public services in our borough, people present, that those people that run those public services, so that mostly libraries, public buildings, community centres, council office buildings, anywhere where somebody might present and say that they're in need of help, that people would know where to signpost them to mostly our refugee team that Jamie mentioned before. And it was about thinking about what language we use, thinking about how the leaflets that we have available talk to people in their own language to make it as easy as possible for people to be able to find the information that they need. That was the process of becoming a borough of sanctuary. So I think because you touched on this before, we live in a really difficult time, I think, in our country, particularly around immigration, asylum, and refugees. There are lots of people that don't really understand the difference between those things and why people are here for the reasons that they are. And I think that causes quite a lot of difficulty, really, for us as a country. So I think when you talk about borough of sanctuary, for some people, that is a positive message about how we're a welcoming community. For other people, it sounds like you're opening the floodgates to something that they don't want. And how do you manage that division is a really, really complicated thing to achieve. So I think passing the motion was a statement for the people who want to be a welcoming place, but continuing to talk about it when we don't need to because we put those measures in place, can actually end up being divisive. So I think we've done what we need to do to be welcoming, which is the right thing to do, and I think we're trying to manage the more sort of macro stuff in our country, which is more of a challenge in certain places, in the way that you were talking about social media and about how people perceive language. And Borough of Sanctuary is a positive statement for me as an individual, but that isn't the same for everybody, and I think managing that is really, really difficult.
Personally, having been a journalist on a local newspaper, there's a lot. I think what the question is really saying is, when the City of Sanctuary was established in 2018, there was a heck of a lot of publicity for it and talk about it, and then it's how do you keep that message going that we still are, and also how do we, and very often I feel social media is very good at this, is saying again and again the same thing until people do understand the difference between refugee, asylum seeker, homeless, or maybe there is no difference in certain areas. So I think that the message is that from this question is that we seem not to be told, are we still a borough of sanctuary, and if so, what is being done currently?
We have a refugee and asylum seeker team which support people on a daily basis. I actually was sent the report from the officer who called Cllr today, but I haven't read it, and I wish if everybody else wants to speak and you can give me 2 minutes, I will find out what I've put it in my emails. But it's really important that we recognise that Chester has remained a city of sanctuary, and that Cheshire West and Chester remains a borough of sanctuary. And the key thing was about how people can get support and the measures that you need to put in place by the organisation, by the sanctuary organisation, to hold that award. And every year we renew that commitment as a local authority by passing motions and making sure that as a public service, the public services that we have still hold that information and that it's up to date. So they're the things that we do. We're doing them all the time. I suppose it hasn't been the same fanfare that there was at the time. And the reason why there was a fanfare at the time was because Afghan refugees were coming to be housed in Cheshire West and Chester, and we were being very welcoming about that. But thank you. But we're not still in the same sort of evacuation situation as we were when troops were pulling out of Afghanistan.
Thank you. Salma, do you have anything to add? I think you have to kind of be standing maybe like this.
I do. Leicester is also a city of sanctuary, and we're very, very proud that we are a city of sanctuary, and we have a host of organisations and charities that are committed to being a city of welcome. I'm going to slightly disagree with you in the approach, because I think not sharing it, not speaking up about it, not talking about it more and keeping it in the public domain, I feel almost gives in to the people that you may think are going to be against it. It's a bit like in the playground giving in to bullies, because if you give in to them, they win. Whereas actually what we try to do is we keep sharing the positive stories. We keep talking about the massive impact that people who've come to Leicester have made to Leicester. You know, the sort of the range of languages people speak, the range of food that you can access, but also, you know, the impact it's had on the economy in Leicester, how much more richer the city is because of the people that have come there from these diverse communities, but also, you know, really sharing their stories about why they've come to Leicester, what have they had to endure, what have they had to escape from, and actually making sure that those individuals, you know, they become people. They're not figures. They're not just somebody that we refer to as the refugees or the asylum seekers. Who are the people that we're talking about? What are their, in the same way that we humanise people who are homeless? I never use the phrase homeless people. I never use the refugee people. somebody is not homeless, that is, unfortunately, they are a victim of homelessness, they are a victim of torture, they are a victim of addiction. And we have to change the language that we use in how we talk about people. And it's only that way that we're going to start winning over the hearts and minds of the people that don't want to hear that we're a city of sanctuary, or that we're a welcoming city, or we're opening our doors to people who need it in their time of need. Because, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant, but I feel that, you know, if I was that person in need, if I was that person in that situation, I would want to know that I could go somewhere and they would welcome me in the same way that we welcome them.
I feel like I've misrepresented myself. We still have a refugee and asylum seeker week. We still talk about stories. We still promote all of those things. I don't think I really said exactly what I mean. I think what I was trying to say was that we just try to get on with the job of welcoming people. We would always call out racism. We had or xenophobia. We had a motion to council that was just 2 weeks ago about social cohesion and about how important it was to stand up against kind of the things that had happened in the riots and that period of time in the summer. So it's not about bowing down. It's more about just understanding the kind of complications of society and doing the things that are right, making sure that the support and the services are in place for people when they need them. That is absolutely fundamentally the role of the local authority, and something that we do very, very, very proudly. And I'm sorry if when the words were coming out, they didn't quite say what I meant.
Richard, I just wondered, Kev, when you mentioned that you first came to Chester 2 years ago, did you say? Did you know Chester was a city of sanctuary when you arrived? It's just interesting, isn't it? It's just yeah. It's a stop on the train. Maybe it wasn't your priority at the time. So, thank you all. I think you mentioned this earlier, Jamie. One question here talks about the amazing work that's undertaken each day by local groups such as Cllr and Share Shop. And without their input, homeless individuals in Chester would have no one to turn to. Why has funding for temporary accommodation been reduced, making it harder for charities such as these to function? So, Jamie, maybe you'd like to...
I don't think it has. I think
the person who submitted the question.
Less money because when it was COVID, it was all in. That finished in April, so they did carry it on for quite a while. It's now not all in, so there's going to be a lot less spent. It's only people who are priority need, which the downside of that is there's more people on the streets. But
Thank you.
So, as Jamie said, during the COVID period, the council took the decision, as did a lot of councils, to house everybody in hotels. Hotels obviously weren't able to because of the restrictions that were in place at the time. So in order to keep people safe, it was a good idea to move people into some sort of accommodation. And as a local authority, we held that line and kept people in hotel accommodation right the way up until the last two hotels, which are the Dean Hotel on Hoole Road and the Woodhay in Ellesmere Port. In November, in the middle of November, the Woodhay will no longer be used as a temporary accommodation because we're opening more supported accommodation places. Those are Curzon House, which is in Westminster Park, and another one on Watergate Street. We also have the Mulberry Centre, which is currently undergoing a repurposing because it suffered from the significant flooding in Sealand Road that happened about 2 years ago. I'm looking at Lindsay, it was about a year or 2 years ago. So, as a council, we are spending less money on temporary accommodation, by which I mean hotels, bed and breakfasts, those kind of things, where there is no support. You're just put into a hotel and that's where you're left until your case has been assessed. And instead we are investing in supported accommodation, lots and lots more beds, so that we have support workers, some of them are in the room today, who are working with people all of the time in connection with the charity and voluntary sector to try and support people through a process into their own accommodation. that is a much better and much more effective system. So yes, you could argue that we're spending less money on hotels if you look in the council's budget, but you will see that we're spending a lot more money on supported accommodation. At the moment in Cheshire West and Chester, the numbers are actually quite low. We're doing okay. There are currently 8 families that are in temporary accommodation. There's 9 couples and there's 63 single people, and those numbers are so much lower than where we were in 2019. Really, like incredibly a lot lower. But we have 250 supported accommodation places. Is that right? 2 beds, I think. So our strategy is not to be using hotels, not to be using bed and breakfasts, but to be using proper rooms with showers and beds and somewhere to leave your stuff, that's in a place where there is staff all of the time that are there to help people and support people, and not to just leave people put people in a taxi and send them to a hotel somewhere and ask them to stay there for the same reasons that Kev mentioned about how long he lasted in a hotel. We need proper accommodation where people are being provided with support on a daily basis so that they can move on in their lives.
So part of the question was about charities' involvement, and that's me. What's the problem with homelessness? Point 2 is there's a massive grey ball of disillusionment right the way around homelessness, and sometimes I think it's personal in my head, because I believe what I'd do in another person's situation, i.e. if I was homeless, I'd go to that place where I've been telling someone to turn up to. But also the other side of it is if I worked for the council or the local authority, I'd stick that fella in a hotel room because he's not well. And that's where the charities are, in the middle of these. The homeless guys completely disillusioned with the system, and the people running the system completely disillusioned with the homeless guys not doing what they should be doing. And I can guarantee that you'll answer this, we could go into any single house and ask all these houses that we're talking about with the council, you could go into any single one and ask them what a support worker does. Any single person living in a house and say, what does a support worker do? And I guarantee that you won't get the same answer that the council give us of what these organisations do. I am, or I think I am, I haven't met another one, what I'd call the bottom line, like front step dad working with homeless people, because the wages are that bad that you get a lot of students, or you get a lot of, I also say breadwinner, because obviously relationships aren't male female, but I'm the breadwinner in my family because we've got kids, and my missus is her own. Missus works in a laundrette, but the wage is that bad that you can't get other people. I'm not saying fellas can do it better than women. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that often the support moves. It moves as much as the homeless guys. So you often say, oh, they're doing that, or they're doing that. We had a conversation coming in. I'm trying to do stuff with the lads in Kev's house. I'm not their support workers. I'm not the people who are getting paid to support them. Their support worker's a really nice person. We're walking in, he said, oh, she's gone. You'll have to get back in touch and find out who the new support worker is. I said, do you know who the new support worker is? Kev said, no, not yet. I said, okay, well, I'll get back in touch with and find out who your support worker is, so we can work together. Certainly don't work against services, but it is very, very this disillusionment, and the charities are in the middle of it, trying to say to them, no, what he means is this, and then say, this is what you do, and this is what you do. And it often feels like you're working in a gulf. That's what I think. Sorry, I went on there.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that's given us a very good insight into what's happening on a day-to-day basis with homeless people. Kev?
Is this working? Yeah. Just think what people have got in their head to the reality of supported living is it's not really supported. Let's put it that way, I'll be honest. Do you know what I mean? You've got support workers, which I'm not going to say all support workers, because some great support workers, there really is, do you know what I mean, who are passionate about what they do. But then you've got support workers who and like you said there, the wages and this, the lack of experience, they don't know what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? They'll not my job attitude. Do you know, like they don't even know their own job description, some of them, to be honest with you. And it's probably not their fault because they're not getting the right training, which I can understand. But some people guys are getting jobs. And to be honest with you, they spend more time playing on the phone in the office or in whatever else than what they do visiting houses, doing weekly checks, you know. And at the end of the day, sometimes, like, you know, you might have a support worker supporting you in a certain way to do something, and then the next thing you know, you're being put onto somebody else, and it's like everything's got to start all over again, this, that, and the other. Like, for instance, I only got accepted onto the house in what's it called, that thing, the West Cheshire homes, after like nearly 2 years, and that's down to my support worker, you know, not doing the job. Unfortunately, and I'm not naming, I'm not going to knock anyone, because at the end of the day, but you need to get people with passion, people who want to do the job, not for the money, because you're never going to become a millionaire to be, you know what I mean?
With lived experience.
Yeah.
So people with lived experience can come round and you can see the passion in them. And there's a lot of people like that.
It's just sad because, you know, a lot of people, even in the hostels, they haven't, like, you know, they haven't got a clue, like, you know, they're living in a chaotic life. They haven't got a clue if they've got to go and register with a doctor, or if you've got to go and get onto a property. None of them, half of them have never even seen a laptop in their life. Do you know what I mean? Or if they have, they don't know how to work on anyway. The basic life skills, as I said earlier on, there's nothing in place to try and make someone better themselves. It's just that now you're in this system now, and you're going around there, and you'll jump onto there, and then you'll go. It's just another number on the cycle of life, unfortunately. That's the way I look at it.
Do we have any support workers in the audience who would like to put forward their case? I'm aware that we can't hear, you know, we can't hear from a support worker's vision.
Is one of the best. Our part of our job is around councils to try and get people with no local connection out.
Yeah.
Cheshire West, like we've got the Mars meeting, which we don't have to have to open Sutton beaches, which we didn't have to have. Cheshire West, all good. System, it's disillusion.
Thank you, Jamie. Salma, would you like?
One of the big issues that we have is, and you may remember, I think you may remember, is when supported. The support element of supported. I've lost my chain of thought. But that was taken out. So, for instance, when we provide accommodation to somebody who's eligible for benefit, we don't get paid the element for the support worker's salary. We have to use grant funding and donations to pay for that part of the work that we do. But that part of the work, that part of the puzzle is so crucial in actually supporting somebody to move on with their life. So, you know, some of these, the funding around the homeless and housing sector is so disjointed, it's so unfair. And, you know, we've been, again, you know, and I keep talking about campaigning, but we've been working with Homeless Link and other partners around campaigning for a sector that's better funded, a sector that is funded long term rather than this short term piecemeal bits of funding we get for a year, and then you're spending so much time trying to get more grant funding in and more money in so that somebody can continue their work. So what somebody like probably Kev wants is you want the same support worker that you meet on day one to work with you through your journey until you're stable. You don't want to have to redevelop those support work relationships. You don't want to have to tell your story to 10 different individuals. How dehumanizing is that? How derogatory is that? But it's so challenging when you're working in a sector that is so underfunded and funded. And one of the things that, you know, I just find, you know, I honestly do think that we do such a better job of running this country and the economics of this country, because we as you know, almost like, I'm going to say lay people, but in the sector, we can see how disjointed that is, that there should be cross-departmental working on homeless and housing, it can't be solved by one department. It costs the DWP literally millions, if not billions. But then they don't work with DLURC around housing and homelessness. So we're saying that actually if all these cross-governmental departments worked better together in synergy, actually the sector would be better funded and we'd probably have better outcomes for the individuals that we're supporting. So there's a lot of issues with the funding of the sector.
Thank you, Salma. Right, it's 10 to 8, and I'm aware that we haven't heard that much from the audience. I have got a couple more questions, but has anybody got a question that they'd like to put to a member of the panel?
Hello, yes, thank you. This may be particularly relevant to Salma, and I'm aware that you were talking about the difficulty in building new housing in Leicester because of the sort of geographical configuration. There was an article in The Guardian last Saturday that gave an estimate that in the UK there are around 700,000 homes which are and have been empty for over 3 years. And I'm aware that councils have some legislative powers to encourage or even force the owners to put them on the market and to sell them. But that's an astonishing figure. And if those homes were utilised, then that would help to solve the problem enormously. I'm just wondering what the panel think about that.
I'm not going to speak for Leicester. This thing's gone off again. I'm so sorry, but sorry to keep speaking. They have had the empty homes, the empty home scheme in Leicester, and it worked really well. They only had funding to operate it for a short amount of time. Now, the problem with empty homes is while some of those empty homes are actually owned by individuals and they can access the information about who owns them, if that empty home is actually owned by a business or has been, somebody who's like a social landlord, or then they have no access to that. They can't do anything with that empty home. So whilst, yes, we have a lot of empty homes, it's how, and I think maybe it's more a question for the council, but how do they make sure that they can actually access those homes, use those homes? Where's the funding going to come from to renovate those? Because a lot of them, when they're empty, are dilapidated. We did have a very good scheme which brought a few empty homes back into circulation probably about 5-6 years ago, but the funding dried up, so they need funding to be able to do that. But yeah, I think for me, it's whether it's councils, but definitely the government could be doing a lot more around that, because, the first step of, alleviating somebody's state of homelessness is getting them the accommodation. It's not the only solution. We still have to look at having, a very person-centered approach. We've got to make sure that we're giving people individualized support. We're looking at trauma-informed care. So you've got to put a whole package of support around those individuals or families, but we've got to start somewhere with trying to access more homes. And like I said earlier, I think empty homes and empty buildings, I don't know what it's like in Chester. We have a lot of empty shops, we've got a lot of empty offices, especially now that there's so much hybrid working. And it's how do you bring some of those empty buildings back into use for the reasons that we need them to be used, to alleviate homelessness and deal with the housing crisis.
Thanks, Salma. So we've got about 6,500 families that are on the waiting list for housing in Cheshire, West and Chester, and the homeless, the bringing homes back into use policy, we set ourselves about a target of 1,000, and the way that we bring homes back into use, empty homes back into use, is provide grant funding, loans, or we use enforcement measures. And in that, the landlords of them, the owners of them, we use those properties for social housing until that's the agreement that we'll bring the property back into use, but use it to reduce the number of people on our housing register for an agreed period of time in order to invest the money in those properties. We do this all of the time, and the current strategy you can read on the council's website. It runs from 2022 to 2027, and the target is 1,000 homes. I think we're at about 700 or something like that now.
Anything to add? No. Thank you for your question. This side has been a little bit quiet. Is there anyone who's got a question to ask our panel? Tim.
I'm happy to represent this side then. I could imagine I live in one of the villages on the edge of Chester, and I come into Chester on a Saturday to do my shopping. And quite a proportion of those 22 people who are homeless in this city at the moment are going to be on the streets, sitting on a piece of cardboard, wrapped up in a sleeping bag, maybe with something asking for money in front of them. And the simple solution is to reach in my pocket and give a fiver to one, and then I walk further down the road and there is another. I wonder what is the single one most important, most impactful thing that I could do when I see people living homeless lives and want to do something to help. The one thing.
Kev, as someone who's experienced homelessness, would you like?
Hello? I'd say basically signpost them to a service or notify a service. Do you know what I mean? Like I've been in the shop like where we volunteer, and there's people have come in, public have come in off the streets and notified, like, you know, there's such and such a person who's outside the church or what have you, and they're sleeping, you know, they're not getting any help from anyone. They make us aware. One of the guys might go out and have a look, do you know what I mean, to see what the crack is, and then basically get in contact with the council and that. But it depends on the person. No, you turn around, don't give them money, don't give them this, which you're enabling them, and give them a bit of food. How do you know what they like to eat? You know what I mean? How do you know what I mean? Like, but it's an awkward one, isn't it? Like, there is services for people to go if they're hungry, or if they need a shower, or if they need the cat washing, anything done like that, isn't it, Rob? But it's a hard one, you know what I mean? Because not everyone is going to buy alcohol and drugs, but the stereotypical thing is, oh, yeah, no, everyone's going to go out and do this, do that, doesn't that? There's people who go out and buy food with it. I'm not going to lie, I know a few of the guys in the streets, and I have give money across, but that's me. That's not me as a professional. That's me as a friend. Do you know what I mean? But I think it all depends on the person. I'm not going to say do this or don't do this. I think it's down to you as a person to make your own choices up, and to, you know, if you want to do what you feel is right, do it. You know, there's no wrong and there's no right in my eyes. You know, you know, you just got to go with your feelings and how you feel.
It's a really good question. It's really complex, and like Kev, I've given people money. Just to put it into perspective, there's a lad that I'm dealing with who made 663 quid on the last race day in one day on the streets. So he got enough for his drugs, food, and probably a night in somewhere. But I doubt he did any of them apart from one. But if you're giving them, it's their money. That's always been my argument as well. My friends say to me, well, I do, it's up to you what you do. I think it's up to the person. It's who catches you, especially as a person of faith. It's who catches your heart. I think that's been missing from the whole conversations, faith, tonight, which I find quite surprising. The building was sat in, but yeah, we don't. You know, it wasn't so long ago. It wouldn't just be what are the council doing. People would be saying, what are the church doing, or what are faith organisations doing. But
Well, actually, one of the questions is, but I'm well aware that the assemble events are meant to be religiously and politically neutral. So I think that's probably why not a lot has been mentioned on faith. And there is a question about why are cathedrals and churches not being used more to support those in need. But I am well aware that it's 8 o'clock and that we promised to wind up. But that was one question. So if you're
2 years ago, was it 3? They used the churches in Chester. People stayed in the church. The churches have stepped in. Yeah, churches did really well that year. I think that was the best swept that they had.
Does anyone on the panel have anything else? I'm aware that people are expecting this evening to be wound up. There will be an opportunity if you would like to stay. Some of the panel members may be able to hang on for 5 or 10 minutes. But is there anything anybody would like to add before I ask Tim to round up? Richard.
Currently consulting on its homelessness strategy until the 10th of November. So if there's something that you've heard tonight, something that you would like to say about homelessness in Cheshire West and Chester, and you want to contribute towards that, just go onto the council's website. There's just a form to fill in, and you can give your thoughts about what you think you've seen, what you think we could be doing better, or what you believe could be a better way to work with your organisation if you're from a charity, voluntary or faith group. Anything that you think would help. This is a good opportunity to say what you think, and for that to be built into our next version of our homelessness strategy. So that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Salma.
I can't feed into your strategy, but I just following on from that actually it is really important that if it's something you are passionate about and you do know people who are passionate about it, do feed into the consultation. I mean, we did, and we got our residents and our volunteers and our supporters to also feed into it, because if you don't feed into it, then who is going to? You know your city better than anyone else. You hopefully have some ideas and solutions that the council probably have not even thought about, and so we're part of our council strategy. I sit on the action planning committee with our council, and that's how you can affect change and make the change that you want to see in your city. So yeah, definitely. But before we finish, thank you very much.
So thank you to Jamie, Kev, Salma and Richard. I've learnt a lot, and I hope you've all benefited from what we've discussed tonight. I'll now hand over to Tim to say good night.
Do your swap.
I got the star microphone today.
Joe, thank you to you as well. You asked a question that didn't get an answer, what is the church doing? And I can't resist the opportunity to offer a brief reflection on that. It will depend on the church. It will depend on where the church is. Many local churches are deeply engaged with the issues of homelessness. Indeed, it was a priest, Salma, who was the inspiration behind the charity that you now work for in Leicester. And churches also are places that will be generating income for some of the charitable work. Here at the cathedral, we probably don't do as much as we would like to, or as we could, given the resources that we have. But amongst the services that we offer are places of welcome, which offers a listening ear to people. Warm places in the winter it is a scheme that we have supported and offered space for. And there was one other that was on my mind. We are a cathedral of sanctuary and engaged with the refugee support here in the city. But each church will be different in what it can and is able to do. So I just wanted to say that, but I wanted to say a big thank you also to you, Joe, for holding that together, and Jamie, Kev, Salma and Richard. Thank you very much for giving your time. Generating this sort of debate, listening to one another, engaging with it is really important as well. I think one of the worst things for people who find themselves homeless is for those needs not to be discussed or considered. So thank you all for coming as well. We're trying to keep an interesting programme of public square debate running here. The dates for the next 3 next year are on a stand just at the back that Monica is now waving. Do have a look at that when you leave. Our next one is quite a different subject. It's who owns the moon. Now that might seem sort of abstract and distant, but it's the whole question of territory, national boundaries, colonialism, all of that is wrapped up with the question who owns the moon. It will come right home to us. So that is next year. But that's all you need to hear from me. Thank you again, all of you.